Hello, I'm Dr. Kim Fole from Geeks for Social Change. I'm here today to give a little bit of a demonstration of PlaceCal and the ecosystem around it. So, PlaceCal works by a combination of community development and our innovative platform that brings everything together, but also kind of this strategy aspect of sort of like thinking of all of the community information out there as a whole and working out how best to bring it all together. This does mean it can be quite hard to explain from scratch. We'll work on a better, more thought out video as we go on, but just for now, I'll give this as a little bit of a demonstration. So we'll start with the trans dimension. The trans dimension was a site we made in collaboration with Gendered Intelligence, who are one of the biggest trans charities in the UK. They realized they didn't, they're a £2 million turnover charity. They realized they were just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, but well, every other group sort of stayed on no money, basically. Um, so what they really wanted to do was explore the network around them, the network of sort of, all the little day-to-day trans groups. So we made this site with them. We got some beautiful art made, and you can see there's things to do literally every day. So today when I'm making this, there's 5 things on, and usually if we go for weekends, this gets there's like a ton of stuff happening. So when we started this project, we did an online poll for people who follow Gendered Intelligence on Twitter, so already very online people. And we found that the median groups people knew about was 3. You can now see from this partnership that we found literally dozens of groups. I think there's over 50 or 60 now. And all of the information for each of them is visible here. So you might be asking, wow, this is a lot of events. How is it so complete? And the reason is because all of it automatically imports, right? So the first thing we tackled was this idea that people never want to log in to update another thing. There's enough already. People have got Facebook, they've got Meetup, there's Eventbrite, there's all these other platforms. So basically everything here is being imported from somewhere else. So for example, a lot of these events are being imported from a Google Calendar. I know this because we set it up. Some of the other events, like I know for some of the more established partners, like if we go to Dalston Superstore, this is being imported from a Squarespace page. You can see they've got quite a lot on. There's quite a lot of things. Other people use Outlook Calendar, Google, Facebook, Meetup, OutSavvy, all kinds of things. So it all gets imported into one place. This has just been a massive success, and we're currently working out how to roll this out into other areas. So this is like our biggest, most complete success, which has been done with, as you probably know, one of the most marginalized communities in the country, which is trans people. How this looks behind the scenes is a bit like this. So at the moment, we're working on one for Manchester, and this is our default PlaceCal backend that we designed in an age-friendly context. So you can see we've got all these age-friendly colors. But as you can see, we've currently got someone working on building up the listings for specifically Manchester. It's kind of getting going. I'd say this has been a few months' work at this point. But we're really getting there, and then basically at some point we'll update this website to have all the Manchester listings too. So behind the scenes, how this works is basically the mentality we've made PlaceCal work with is that fundamentally everyone wants to represent their community first. So these sites I'm showing you, so you can see here is this thing. We've got Trans Dimension Manchester, we've got one for climate and migrant justice, we've got one for Hume. These sites you see here that at the moment all use the same template, but we're planning on adding more, are configurable. So for example, the Trans Dimension Manchester site, so this is the thing that you see there. It's just taking a second. But this can be, so this can have all these settings configured. And then each of these can be set up to, you can update a logo, you can update a cover image, but then all of them can be configured to show any combination of neighborhoods, and then you can filter it down by any kind of partnership. So this is showing all things tagged Trans Dimension in the Manchester area, right? There's other sites here, for example, say, where's it gone? One second. So GM System Changes is another partnership we've worked with. They are showing everything tagged GM Systems Changes nationally because we found they've got a few more over it, but they are basically based in Greater Manchester. And then there's also one that is just Manchester. I can search for it here. So PlaceCal Manchester is just showing literally everything in Manchester with no filtering. So what this means is that every individual group has its calendar set up. So GM Systems Changes are working with the Women's Social Enterprise Network, we're working with the trans groups, because they're motivated then to make their calendar for that community of interest. But then together they all get combined. So you can see here we've got some of the age-friendly groups we've worked with, some of the trans groups we've worked with, some of the leisure groups we've worked with, some of the people from the Systems Changes group. And the thing of this is it creates this kind of intersectionality where we've already found in some areas, we have an age-friendly partnership in the same area as a trans partnership, and we're able to ask the question, is the age-friendly provision trans-friendly? Is the trans provision age-friendly? And yeah, this key innovation of putting the community of interest at the center of the whole design practice then means that there's motivation to maintain these long term, because the people maintaining the calendars need them for their organizations, they need them for their core work, they need them to understand what's going on. So that's how the sites work. And then under the hood, basically all these partners, I'm not quite sure what that one is. Let's have a look at one I know a little better. So let's look at this one. So basically, like, they get a little name and a description, and you can put in accessibility information. So then they can either have an address, or you can add a service area, which is basically any UK ward or region. So this is for places that aren't at a fixed address. And then once they're there, our system knows where they are, and that's how we're able to pull them out. So you can say, set up a site for everything in Manchester, set up a site for everything in Salford, right? And then once they've been set up, you can link a calendar. So this group hasn't got one yet, but and there's a bunch of options here we don't need to go into. But effectively, you create any source compliant, any standards compliant calendar feeds. This can be iCal, can be JSON, can be a bunch of other things we've got here. We've also got a handbook that shows you the current sources, but there are more than this. Basically, any iCal format will work. And then once it's set up, so maybe we can look at one that has been set up. Like, let's have a look at this one. So this is then automatically pulling it in. So you can see when the source data was last changed, when it was last imported. There's some contact info, and we can have a little look here what's going on. You see it. This is a lot of repeating events. So actually the main benefit of PlaceCal is its ability to represent repeating events. Like, a lot of events platforms make it a total pain, but we know that the majority of community activity is this kind of day-to-day thing. So this is basically going to be, there's ceramics every week and it's been repeated for a year, which is why it looks like there's so many. And that's kind of it. There's some other details for this. Like, the way the user's permissions work is based on we can give permissions in a few ways, based either on area, based on partnership, or it can be based on individual partners. So the other thing that you can do after these partners have been set up is let this person log in to change the information themselves. So one hasn't been yet, but we can add a partner admin here. And then this will create an account for this person that can only edit this partner. So you can see there's a few ways we can do it. So basically what we have is a bunch of, we've split the problem apart. The first half of it is creating this canonical source of information for the helping the group set up a canonical source of information. So our community development program that we're running, we've called it Community Technology Coordinator as the role. The idea is that we train people up who are already in the community, going out and meeting people, how to basically train people to set up a website in whatever way works for them, as long as it has this like standards compliant feed. So we're sort of increasing the overall infrastructure as we go. And then it lets them edit it. So again, this is already a step above the way a lot of these things go, where it means that a project worker who has the time and energy can set up a whole profile with someone. Very often this is done face-to-face in a session, but we've based it around the idea that the person doing the community development work is setting this up with the person. And then after that, they can create a login for them, but they don't have to, and it can be maintained centrally. So it just sort of, we've basically designed it around where the energy actually is, rather than where we kind of wish it was. As we mentioned before, we've got this feature, so you can see we've got, you can sort things into partnerships, so this lets you have just your groups in a thing. I'd also note that the other benefit of this is a lot of community place centers, especially, are in multiple different projects, right? So our climate justice calendar that we're working on in the Northeast, a lot of this is climate and migrant justice. So we're still having interesting discussions around, is this two calendars? Is it a migrant justice calendar and a migrant justice calendar and a climate justice calendar, or is it both? Or do they overlap? Do they need to be maintained by different people? And then I think also this then allows some of these campaigns to get joined up over larger areas, right? So, for example, the trans dimension is now becoming a national initiative in its own right. It's kind of interesting, and I think all of this is because we've completely separated out viewing the events from like entering and updating and maintaining the events, and hopefully we've created this sort of like digital commons then that has all this flexibility on it. And then, I mean, I don't know how many people listening to this will make sense to, but we have an API. You can get all the information out of this and import it into other websites using GraphQL, it's called, as the backend. But basically, we're working on making a plugin so you can then have feeds come into your site. If it means if you're an infrastructure organization, you could use PlaceCal to store all the information and be the source for the groups, and then you can display it using our API. So this is kind of all stuff we're working on. It's in our handbook, which is at handbook.placecal.org. And I think that's everything. So like we said, I think underlying all of this is the idea that rather than dealing with tech needs piecemeal, one at a time, one app, one platform, we actually do it as a community. So rather than it being just another app, as we keep saying, the first step is to support people to use what they're already using. Then our platform sucks it all together and puts it in one place. And then finally, you can curate how it's output in whatever way you want. The trans dimension is our biggest success, but we're hoping we can make more successes like this with their own custom front ends. And by the way, this is like a separate site that runs elsewhere, so now other people can control all the other aspects of this site. So we think underlying this, we've made the infrastructure we need to kind of make any community of place, interest, all work together and with minimum effort for everyone involved in a way that then means no one has to use, the big tech silos. So thanks for listening, and I hope that was helpful.